Welcome. My name is Diane Proctor, and I'm hosting this event as the chair of the League of Women Voters Town Government Committee. During this challenging COVID time, the League is providing Concord citizens with an opportunity to hear in advance of the September 13th town meeting from Carmen Reese, our town moderator, about some important details about the upcoming town meeting. Carmen will begin with introductory remarks. Then I will ask her additional questions, which we imagine are on all citizens' minds. Take it away, Carmen.
Thank you so much, Diane. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm grateful to the League of Women Voters for putting together this video for our voters in Concord. So as you mentioned, Diane, the town meeting this year will be on Sunday at 1 p.m. and that is September 13th. And the venue will be outdoors, and it will be at the Doug White Fields, which is located, it's the soccer fields located up behind the high school. Now, we're taking several different measures to make sure that public health is protected in holding this town meeting. Really 4 things overall. 1 is the outdoor venue. 2 is that we will ask everyone to wear a mask. 3 is that we will require social and physical distancing. All the chairs will be set up in advance, and we'll have monitors and have markers where people can queue and maintain that social distance. We'll be doing that in the bathrooms and so forth. And then finally, we will be streamlining the business of the meeting in order to allow the meeting to take less time and therefore expose us all to less risk of virus transmission. So I do want to note that a number of towns in Massachusetts have held their town meetings recently in the last couple of months using more or less this format, and it's gone extremely well, and there have been no reports whatsoever of any spikes of COVID infections as the result of those town meetings. I'll also say I've been working very closely with our Director of Public Health, Susan Rask, here in town, and she's very comfortable with the measures that we have in place. So the way that we'll be streamlining the meeting is a robust use of the consent calendar. We're all familiar with the consent calendar. Usually it has routine and non-controversial matters on it. And we're going to be expanding it this year to include non-routine matters, but ones which are still non-controversial and have the support of the select board, and if it's a financial matter, the finance committee as well. And all of those will be matters on which we expect there will be strong public support. So we're expecting right now that there'll be 23 articles on the consent calendar. Then there will be some articles which will not be moved, either because they don't need to be, or because the sponsors of those articles feel comfortable in delaying them for consideration later. And there will be certain articles which will be postponed for the same reason. We're going to combine all of those articles into a single motion, which will be a motion to postpone. And the reason we're going to do that is because it has the same effect as a matter of law in terms of the town meeting action to just move to postpone indefinitely 10 articles. We'll have 10 articles in that motion. And it'll just be a lot more efficient for us to do all 10 of those together. And then finally, we'll have 16 articles that we will take up for full deliberation. We'll still be streamlining those in a couple of ways. One is that there'll be no presentations, no formal presentations on those articles. So we're urging all voters to go to the town website and review the hearings that have been recorded on all of the articles that we will be taking up for full deliberation, and reviewing the materials that are posted on the website about those articles. We will have meeting materials distributed at the meeting, which will have the motion on each of those articles. It will have a narrative summary by the article sponsor of what the article does and why town meeting is being asked to support it. And there will be various other items in those materials as well for voters' reference. There won't be any video screens. And so we're going to be relying on our sound system to read things and listen to them. We're going to reduce the amount of time that speakers will speak from the floor. Traditionally, we've done 2 minutes for the last several years anyway. We'll reduce it to 1 minute this year in recognition of the urgency that we have in completing the business of the meeting. And I neglected to mention that with the other change we're going to make in the consent calendar is to ask for 10 voters rather than 5 to remove any item from that calendar for full deliberation. And that's just to have a little bit more weight behind that expressed desire of the meeting to take up an article for full deliberation rather than act on it expeditiously. So we'll have the article sponsors available to answer questions that are raised from the floor or respond to comments. And if there are amendments, we will have those, if we have them in advance, printed in the meeting materials. And if they're not, if we don't have them in advance, then they can be made from the floor. They'll need to be in writing, and we're working out right now what the procedure for that will be, whether we'll have an email address and someone monitoring that so that it can be a motion to amend could be emailed or texted from the floor. Or whether we'll have a runner to take it on paper. And this year, the deputy town moderator, Carrie Flood, will be available to help people with their proposed amendments. So I think that's about it. I'll just mention that voting will still be by raised, brightly colored paper ballot this year. And we won't have any electronic voting. If we have to take a count, we'll be using tellers. And that's about it that I have. Our goal is to complete the meeting in a single session. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have, Diane.
Thank you so much, Carmen. That's an extremely helpful introduction. Would you remind us what we should or cannot bring to the meeting besides masks?
Absolutely. Everyone should bring a mask. It is recommended that because we will be outside in the sun, that you bring a hat and an umbrella. There will be some umbrellas available for those who have not brought them. There will also be some masks available for those who have forgotten theirs. We're encouraging everyone to bring water, and it needs to be plain water. The turf fields allow for only water, no flavored water, no sugar drinks, and no snacks. If you do bring a sealed snack with you that you wish to eat, you're going to have to depart the turf field and return after you've eaten your snack. Probably a good idea to bring insect repellent in case we end up going into the dusk hours, and we will have some individually wrapped insect repellent wipes available for folks who have forgotten their insect repellent and would like to have it. Probably a good idea to bring your own finance committee report or warrant with you. And I will say we're still working with the same warrant. It's the same warrant that was distributed to everyone in February. But we will have extra copies of those as well at the meeting for folks who have forgotten.
Thank you so much. And you'll have Perel or something if people need or wish to clean their hands?
Absolutely. There will be hand sanitizer. There'll be some individual bottles of hand sanitizer. There'll be, by the restrooms, there will be hand sanitizer. So there certainly will be hand sanitizer available. There's still no harm in bringing your own pocket hand sanitizer with you.
Okay. Can you tell us how best to drive to the Doug White Fields and provide us with a sense of the parking protocols that are being used that day?
Yes, there are 2 driveways into the high school, one from Walden Street and one from Thoreau Street. The Thoreau Street exit will be blocked as an entrance, and folks will be able to park on both sides headed out the driveway. So that is a location that will be available for parking. Everyone will be asked to enter by the Walden Street entrance. And The only people who should drive all the way up to the Doug White Field, which is in back up above in back of the high school, you'd keep going straight there, are people who have accessible parking needs, because that lot is going to be reserved for staff staging and for accessible parking. There's only about 20 spots up there. And yes.
Accessible parking, I presume you mean handicap parking.
Yes, but you know, I would say that we won't limit that necessarily to somebody who has a handicap placard. Okay. If you had knee surgery and you're on crutches, but you don't have a handicap placard, drive on up there to the accessible parking and there'll be a spot for you. And the parking in the half of the Beatty Center lot will be available. All of the rest of the high school parking will be available. And if we run out of parking, there will be satellite parking at the Alcott School, and we will have a shuttle bus, and we've worked that out with the Director of Health. It'll be a reduced capacity bus with people sitting alternate seats on that bus coming from the Alcott parking lot. Or if it's a lovely day, you can certainly walk if you come early enough.
Ah, what a delightful thought. Let us hope. How will check-in work after folks are parked? How will the check-in process work?
So check-in will be located at the Doug White Field, and folks who are walking up from the lower parking lot on the cafeteria side of the high school, they may walk straight through the building if they wish, or around. Either way, it may be a little shorter to walk through the building. And they'll continue walking up to the Doug White Field. Then we'll have the path marked, so it'll be very clear where you need to walk.
That's good.
And the town clerk will be using an iPad check-in system this year, so there'll be no need to identify what line you should be in by last name or street name. Every line will be able to check in every voter, and that should help speed us up a little bit. So check-in will be clearly marked. There'll be an adjacent table of materials where people may pick up their own materials that they are going to take away with them. And they will receive a voting slip as well at check-in.
And just to remind folks who perhaps are new to Concord, no ID or identification is necessary in order to check in.
No, you just need to say what your name is and your street address is, and the iPad will allow the check-in person to pull up quickly your voter registration information, confirm that there is someone with that name and that street address registered to vote in Concord, and they'll check you off so that no one else checks in as you.
Terrific. How will seating be actually organized on the field?
Well, we'll be out there with measuring tape and staff so that all of the seats will be positioned with a 6-foot radius around them. We'll put 2 seats together in every location so that folks who are coming as couples to town meeting will be able to sit next to each other. And if you're coming on your own, you get an extra seat for materials. And most, if not all, of the seats will have a little plywood platform under them to protect the turf field from the chairs digging in. But the seating will be clearly marked, and the accessible seating, which again is not limited only to people who have a handicapped parking pass, but to people who just have a hard time walking a long distance. They will have that seating area clearly marked, and it'll be as close as we can make it to the handicap parking area.
That's terrific. We'll get to microphones in a minute in relationship to needing accessibility, but will there be Wi-Fi available? That has traditionally not been an area where Wi-Fi is easily accessed.
We do expect that there will be Wi-Fi. We have made arrangements with Comcast to bring a van to provide us with a hotspot of Wi-Fi service on Sunday. And I believe that has been made by Comcast as a donation to the town, so we're very grateful for that. We're also currently working on having as a backup a permanent installation of town Wi-Fi up at the fields. So we're hoping that that will be in place as a backup, but we'll know more about that in another week or two.
Okay. You mentioned that you might be texting. My understanding, I'm not always conversant with these things, but my understanding that is that texting requires a cell phone number. How could you text citizens if you don't have cell phone numbers at hand?
Right. So I don't actually know, Diane, what the cell coverage is up there. And if there's not good cell coverage, what people might be able to use is their cell phone over Wi-Fi ability on their own phones. I find that I have to use that in my own house in Concord. I have AT&T over Wi-Fi for my cell phone.
Okay, well, I didn't know you could text without a telephone number, so that's new information to me.
Oh, well, no, you do need a telephone number. I mean, you do have to have a yes. And so if we are, for example, offering as an option for one of the ways that people can communicate a proposed amendment to us.
That's what I was considering.
Yes, if we offer that, we are going to be, we're going to have a number that we will recite and have posted.
Terrific. You've mentioned that there are bathrooms available. Where are they and how accessible are they?
The bathrooms are accessible. My understanding is that there's a men's room and a woman's room, that each of them has 2 stalls, that we should be able to allow 2 people in the restroom at a time. We will have on site a male and a female custodian for the entirety of the meeting who will be cleaning and sanitizing those restrooms once an hour, and we'll keep tabs on supplies, hand sanitizer, and making sure that the maximum occupancy limit is observed in the restroom, as well as keeping tabs on the social distancing in the line outside. And those are located right there adjacent to the field at the front side where we will have the stage, and the path to the restrooms is an accessible surface.
That's terrific. Some people have wondered why we're not doing, given all the complexity and the detail you've had to undertake, why are we not doing the town meeting as a Zoom meeting?
That's a great question, Diane, and Zoom is working quite well for you and I right now. And in fact, all of the hearings that we have held in the lead up to town meeting, actually not all of them, back before the COVID crisis hit, we did have a couple of the meetings in person, but the balance of the meetings have been on Zoom, and I would say they've been quite functional and gone quite well. Unfortunately, under state law, a open town meeting legislature must be conducted in person with its votes in person. We do not have authority under state law to have any remote voting at town meeting. There has been emergency legislation passed as in response to the COVID crisis for representative town meetings to hold virtual town meetings. They're able to do it because they've got a much smaller number of individuals. They're able to securely check those people in, verify who they are, secure their networks from outside interference, and they're able to record the votes in a secure and reliable way. So until there's technology that allows us to do that on a broader scale for a meeting where you could have as many as 13,000 registered voters turn up, that's just not available to us.
Speaking of registered voters showing up, will these proceedings be filmed?
They will. They will be recorded and broadcast live on the Minuteman Media Network, so that folks will be able to watch that on the local access channels on their TV set. They'll also be able to watch live on the website. There'll be links there from the town the Concord Town website. There'll be links there for how you find that. And the proceedings will also be broadcast live on radio on our local high school radio station.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize any of those. So that's wonderful to know. Will the usual ceremonies that so characterize Concord town meetings be part of this event?
Well, I will say that it grieves me to say so, but we are shortchanging some of those traditional ceremonies, Diane, in favor of public health. So I actually do love the moment when the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts come forward in our moment of silence carrying the flags and do their little ceremonial cross across the front of the hall and put the flags in their stands. But this year we'll start with the flags in place. I really enjoy and appreciate the tributes that we customarily have to our departing elected officials. Those are going to be in writing in our materials this year instead of delivered orally. And boy, we've got some public servants who've worked really hard for us this year, and I'm sad to deprive them of that, but I think we'll be able to have a moment of applause.
Thank you. That is clarifying and helpful. Can you give us some estimation for how long you imagine this meeting will be?
Well, how long the meeting is up to the meeting, as it always is.
Okay.
So if we have 15 articles that we're taking up, and actually it's 16 for full deliberation, if we spent 5 minutes on each of those articles, that would take us an hour and 20 minutes. If we spent 10 minutes on each of those, and that would be after we had dealt with the consent calendar and the motions to postpone indefinitely. If we spent 10 minutes on each of those articles, that would take us a little over 2.5 hours. So that just kind of gives you a feel. There may be some articles that indeed we're able to act on very quickly. There may be a couple of articles that really require a little more discussion. So it's anybody's guess whether we're at an hour and 15 minutes or 2.5 hours. Hopefully nothing longer.
Thank you. We're recording this on August 27th. And I know that the FinCom report has been printed, but it probably has not arrived in people's mailboxes yet. That FinCom report is helpful for what reasons, and should people bring it with them if they wish to the town meeting?
Well, I think it's a great idea to bring it with you. Some of the motions that you will see, we won't reprint the text of the articles that are in the warrant in the meeting materials. So you will want either the warrant or the Finance Committee report, both of which have the text of the articles in them, with you along with the meeting materials. If you forget yours, we will have some additional copies of both of those things at the meeting. But the Finance Committee report will have some very useful current information on the town's current fiscal situation in terms of collection of revenues to date, how things have changed there, what our financial outlook is going forward with respect to increased costs, with respect to revenue collection, and with respect to state aid. The Finance Committee report will also have the consent calendar printed in it, so everyone will know what that is in advance. It will also have reminders about town meeting, that the same ones we've discussed today about what to bring with you, where it is, and so on. And it will have, importantly, the recommendations of both the Finance Committee and the Select Board on all of the articles on which they've made recommendations, so the town will know what each of those boards recommends.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Just to review, you've also said that the town warrant dated April 2020 that we all received in February is still current. And although there will be extra copies at the meeting, people can bring those as a ready reference. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. The warrant is the warrant. We have posted it and we have recessed and rescheduled town meeting in several 30-day increments to wait for greater comfort given the virus situation. But there's been no change in that warrant. It's still the same warrant.
So the same warrant. Thank you so much. And just to review one more time, if citizens wish to remove something from the consent calendar, they do so by?
When we get to the consent calendar in our proceedings, which will be probably the second or third thing that we take up at the meeting, what I will do is explain again what the consent calendar does, what the procedure is for anyone who wishes to take something off of the consent calendar for full deliberation. And then I will proceed reading through the consent calendar item by item, giving an opportunity, pausing and asking if anyone wishes to place a hold on that article. And if one person does, then we will ask, are there 9 more of you who would like to do that? And if I see 9 paper ballots, we'll mark that one for full deliberation and the consent calendar will be moved without that article. Now, one unusual thing this year is that we have the Community Preservation Committee recommendations on the consent calendar this year. But that's unusual for us. It's not a thing that we usually do. Everyone likes to see those projects. There are 10 individual grants recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. We will take each one of those as an item when I read through the consent calendar so that any one of those projects which anyone wishes to remove from the consent calendar for full deliberation, we can remove and split the vote on that article. And that is an acceptable thing for us to do. And it makes sense in our circumstances to do it that way.
Thank you so much. We're accustomed to coming into the auditorium and seeing, or the gymnasium, and seeing the select board sitting one place, the FinCom sitting another, and the school committee members sitting in another place. I presume that will not be the case this year. Can you explain, if people wish to approach those people or ask questions, how they find them and what the protocols will be?
So, what I think we are going to do, and this is all a little bit fluid, we're not going to have them seated at tables facing everyone the way we have in the past. But I think what we will do is have them sit adjacent to each other, although 6 feet apart. And so that we'll mark the area where those committees will sit, so people will have a general understanding of where they are. Now, because we're supposed to be staying 6 feet away from each other, you know, one
accent actually. I got this joke.
One will take care, certainly wearing one's mask in approaching a select board member that one wishes to speak to. And if there is a desire to have a select board member or a finance committee member or any other board, school committee or planning board, to address one of the articles that's within their purview, certainly any voter who wants to hear from them can approach a microphone and ask to hear from the select board or the planning board about this question.
That's wise advice. Will there be the pro and con microphones to which we're accustomed, and how do we keep those microphones sanitary as each successive person comes to a microphone?
That's an issue we spent a lot of time on, Diane, and we have worked with our vendor who will be supplying us with microphones, who has done this already in several town meetings. And together with town staff and the vendor, I've had a conference call with our Director of Public Health to talk through what our system will be. I'm very pleased to say that our Director of Public Health is quite comfortable with what our approach is. So we won't have pro and con microphones. Okay. We will have 3 microphones. They will be located at the very front of the field. We'll have movement in the aisles in the field in a single direction to avoid people having to pass each other in close contact, so that people will be able to queue at 6-foot intervals up to those 3 microphones. Now, in between speakers, as soon as a speaker finishes on, this is going to be a little bit like the checkout line at the grocery store. So you're going to stand in line, and when the speaker in front of you departs, you're going to stay right where you are at the front of the line and not move until a staff person has removed the microphone, replaced it with a different microphone that has a fresh wind cover on it, and wipes down the microphone stand and the microphone itself. And then they'll give you the high five that you're good to proceed back to the microphone. We expect that we'll still be able to proceed smoothly with comments from the floor with this system, because we do have 3 microphones. So by the time that has happened, we'll be back to that microphone again and ready for that speaker, and it will just be rolling in that way.
That's terrific. Carmen, for people who have hearing problems, has someone tested out the sound system, and do we know, is there going to be a way that people with hearing aids can electronically connect and hear the discussions?
We will have hearing assistance devices available at town meeting. We will have 2 or 3 varieties of devices so that people will be able to choose the one they like the most. My understanding is that one of the devices that we'll have available this year is basically an antenna cord that you can put around your neck that will gather the signal from the microphone system, from the sound system. And if you have the type of hearing aid that is able to connect to a T-coil, to a hearing loop, you can switch your hearing aid to that loop, and you will be able to get the signal directly to your hearing aid from that loop around your neck. We will be testing these things out prior to town meeting. We have a date in which we'll be assembling our vendors, and I'll be there, and town staff will be there, and the light department will be there, and we'll be testing our electric needs. We'll be testing all kinds of things. And the hearing assistance devices are high on the list of things to be checked.
I know that everyone will appreciate that very much, who suffer from hearing challenges of one kind or another, because that can be very frustrating.
It sure can. And I'll note, we're going to be outside.
I know.
There's going to be road noise from Route 2 behind us.
That's right.
So we know it's going to be a challenge, and we're trying hard.
That's terrific. Speaking of antennae, what if it rains? What if we suddenly find ourselves in the middle of the meeting and it starts to rain? What are the plans, and how are you imagining? Should everybody bring an umbrella?
Everyone should bring an umbrella for sun or rain.
Okay.
And I would say that if we get a little light drizzle, as long as we aren't going to blow up the sound equipment, we're going to push on in the light drizzle. I will tell you that when my daughter graduated from college, it was an outdoor graduation. It poured rain, and we all sat there for the graduation, and there was no tent. So if it pours rain, we will adjourn the meeting to the rain date. But if we get a light drizzle, we're going to try to cope. And that's another reason to bring an umbrella. Now, the other thing that we need to make provision for is the possibility of lightning or thunderstorm.
Right.
And my understanding is, and we're working out the details on this right now, but my understanding is that we do have an alarm on that field that will, a horn that will sound if there is lightning within 5 or 10 miles of the field. And if that horn sounds, that'll be our signal to adjourn the meeting to the rain date, and people will proceed. They'll have plenty of time to proceed back to their cars. And in that instance, what we expect is if there's anyone who has arrived on a bus, we'll either have the bus there for them pronto, or they'll be able to go into the high school and shelter at a safe distance until the thunderstorm is passed. That's the plan.
That's terrific. I want to review something two things that I didn't ask earlier. Having walked into the high school, you can't really walk through on the same level. You have to go up a fairly steep set of stairs in order to reach the fields. Is that still the protocol, or is there some secret way to enter and go around and not have to climb those stairs?
Well, when you come in on the cafeteria level, there are two ways up to the next level, which takes you out the front of the building, the technical front of the building, which is the side the Doug White Fields are on. One is that set of stairs, and it is a long flight of stairs. And the other is there is an elevator. And we will have signs posted, and we hope also a staff member to answer questions about where am I going here, so that people will know exactly where to go, and if they need the elevator, they'll understand where it is. Folks won't be able to use the restrooms in the high school, and they won't be able to wander the high school. They're just going to be passing through as a shortcut.
Terrific. That's very helpful information, and a reminder to people who think they're just going to be walking through the high school. It's a slightly more challenging proposition. If you could just remind us one more thing, and that has to do with postponement. Sometimes we've postponed items that we're not taking up because there's a legal reason to do so. In other cases, people have volunteered and said, well, we can take it up at the next meeting. What protocol have we used, and could you explain that to everyone?
Sure. We have a handful of articles that are marked for postponement, and in a, I think in all of these cases, they are articles which are either just not ripe for decision right now. For example, the fossil fuels article that was on the warrant, I'm not remembering what number that was, but that article was modeled on a similar measure that was adopted by Brookline Town Meeting. And we know that the Attorney General has just invalidated that measure. So that means that our measure is not really ripe for being put forward right now. More research needs to be done on whether there's a way to put that forward. So that's one category of things that would either simply not be moved or postponed. But then there's one citizen petition that the sponsor of felt, well, I can wait for this to come to a later town meeting. It's not urgent for it to happen right now. And really anything that we postpone can be taken up easily at a later meeting, except a zoning article that's brought by citizen petition. On those, if the planning board doesn't approve a zoning board article, a motion to postpone would be taken as negative action by town meeting, in which case the 2-year waiting period before you bring it up again kicks into place. So that is why we have one article, which is a citizen petition that would have been a zoning bylaw, will be moved to be referred to the planning board, because that's clearly not a negative action by town meeting, and that would enable that petitioner to bring it at the next town meeting rather than waiting for 2 years.
That's a terrific explanation, and technically important for those following these deliberations. I want to thank you, Carmen, so much for taking the time to do this so thoughtfully, and for all the work that you and the town staff have done to make this town meeting even possible. I also want to thank Carlin Reed and Peggy Wargelin, who have helped to manage all this, make it possible technically for us to carry on this discussion. And to thank the League for thinking about this and providing this as a support for the citizens of our town. I hope we didn't mention the date of the rain date.
Thank you, Diane. The rain date is the following day, September 14th, but instead of, that's a Monday. And so instead of making it at 1 o'clock, we've made that at 5 p.m., which allows people to come toward the end of their work days, but still preserve some daylight hours. And I'm not sure exactly what the high school is going to be doing at that point in terms of whether there will be people there or not people there, but we thought moving into their space at the end of the school day would be a wise thing to do.
Well, let us hope that the weather gods are on our side, and that Sunday,
Yes.
September 13th at 1 o'clock is a balmy and gorgeous day. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Diane. It's really been a pleasure. And boy, do I share your hope that we have a gorgeous blue sky.
Every finger crossed. Okay.
Thank you.